Hi, I'm Anthony Serna, Fire Chief here in the city of East Chicago, and I'm here at Lincoln School to read to you today, Who Knew There'd Be Ghosts, by the author, Bill Britton. At first, nobody really believed in ghosts, least of all Harry or books or me. Me too. But by the time last summer was over, almost everybody in Brampton had seen Horace and Essie, heard them talking and everything. Sure, those two sly Parnells would fade away and pop into view again like a TV picture on a stormy night, but enough of them showed so they could be recognized for what they were. Since then, ghost hunters and so-called occult scientists have been coming around to visit the old house on Spring Street. If one or both of the Parnells feel like making an appearance, they'll put a real scare into whoever comes calling. Then a story about the Parnells will come out in a magazine or a newspaper. But the story always talk about collective hysteria or mass delusion, as if Horace and Essie weren't real, and anybody who thinks different is soft in the head. Oh, they're real all right. The people of Brampton are kind of proud that Horace and Essie live in our village, although I guess the word live doesn't apply to ghosts. But where those two Parnells would be today if Harry and the Blimp and Books and I hadn't overheard Fancy Shoes and Black Boots talking, well, that's anybody's guess. It all started that first week in August with Harry Books and me playing one of our games at the Parnell place. The three of us have been best friends since second grade. That was 5 years ago, and 5 years is a long time to have the same best friends. The truth is, most of the other kids don't have a lot to do with us. They say we're weird. I bet kids would think I was weird if I talked about ghosts too. We're not though. Different, maybe, but not weird. Take Harry the Blimp, for example. Harry Troy's his real name, but everybody calls him Harry the Blimp because of his size. He's almost 6 feet tall and must weigh close to 200 pounds. He's got a big moon face and looks like he's hiding an inflated inner tube under his shirt. Harry will never get an A+ in the brains department, but he's really a good-natured guy, and I've never seen him get angry at anybody, no matter how much they laugh at him on account of his size. Maybe that's why Harry likes hanging around with Books and me. We don't laugh at him. That's a good point. You'll have more friends if you treat him with respect. Brooke Schofield's the only girl I know who can't make up her mind whether she wants to be a college professor or the bantamweight boxing champion of the world. She usually wears old blue jeans and dirty white sneakers and t-shirts with things like "Save the Whales" on them. She's got freckles and short brown hair and a left hook that could knock the head off of a gorilla. Her real name is Wendy, but everybody calls her Books because there doesn't seem to be anything she doesn't know. She doesn't study more than anybody else, but whenever test marks come out, there's Wendy Schofield's name at the top of the list. Books doesn't make a big thing out of being the class brain, even though it bugs a lot of her classmates. She's a good friend, and I don't think she's weird at all. Me? My name's Tommy Donahue, and I have a way of doing everything wrong. You know what I mean? Give me an arithmetic problem where two numbers just beg to be multiplied, and I'll start doing long division. On dress-up day at school, when all the boys wear jackets and ties and look their best, I'll forget to put on my shirt with a torn pocket and pants with a hole in the knee. Put me in the basketball game, and the first time I get the ball, I'll stuff it in the wrong basket, so the other team gets 2 points. But the one thing I have is a good imagination. I dream up most of the games that Harry the Blimp and Books and I enjoy so much. The things like King Arthur and his knights invade the land of the hobbits, or Robin Hood and his merry men climb Mount Olympus. Sometimes we have a little trouble with Books, who won't sit still for being Maid Marian or Queen Guinevere, while Harry the Blimp and I have all the fun. Usually she figures out some way to put Marian or Guinevere asleep for 1,000 years, or have them hold for ransom in a far-off land. Then she becomes an Amazon warrior, or the bandit Balstar, and she's happy again. For our games, you can't go to a park or playground. I mean, it's embarrassing to be the sheriff of Nottingham archery contest, flexing an imaginary bow, and getting set to shoot at a target 100 paces away when somebody's screaming in your ear to get off the handball court and all the grown-ups are laughing their heads off at you. That's why we like playing at Parnell House so much. 3 whole acres right in the middle of town, with no people around to bother us. The younger kids were scared of the place, and the older ones didn't want to get their clothes dirty. But we 3 thought the place was swell. There were old, twisted trees to climb, and high grass to hide in, and a swampy spot where you could catch frogs. There was even a graveyard out and back with some big monument in the center. The monument was 2 pieces of granite that must have had high polish before the weather got to them. One piece lay across the top of the other like the letter T, with sockets gouged out at each end of the T's crosspiece. All the gravestones around the monument had Parnell carved on them, with odd first names like Jethro and Martita. Wow, what a place to play where a graveyard is, huh? A rusty iron fence surrounded the property, making it easy to imagine we were playing in the courtyard of a castle. The castle, of course, was Parnell House itself. Set high on a hill, it overlooked the whole village. It was all gray and dingy, with clapboards hanging loose and knocking about in the wind, and shingles falling off the roof from time to time. The glass in all the windows had been smashed long ago, and the openings were boarded up. One of the 2 chimneys at the ends of the house had collapsed, and it looked like the other one might fall down at any time. Still, the place had a kind of dignity about it, like a fine lady who'd fallen on hard times. In its day, it must have been real fancy. There were a lot of people in Brampton who wanted to see it fixed up and turned into a museum. They collected a little money for the purpose, but not nearly enough. And if repairs weren't started soon, it wouldn't be long before the house would fall down all by itself. Now this is a great picture that we're describing. I can see the house on the hill. I can see the rusty wooden fence. That's the beautiful thing about books, is when you start to read and use your brain and picture all these things in your imagination. Now you're not to tell Mom and Dad this next part, because they gave me strict orders not to go inside that house. But one day, Harry the Blimp put his shoulder to the rear door, and with a lot of pushing and creaking of rusty hinges, he managed to get it open. Inside, it was hot and stuffy, and the stink of rotten wood was enough to make you choke. But we sneaked around through the 2 big rooms on the main floor with only the light from the open door to see by. There was no furniture, just some hunks of wood lying on the floor. But each room had a fireplace big enough to walk into, and both fireplaces had mantels that were big slabs of solid oak. Words were carved in each slab, and books lit matches so we could read them. The one where the chimney had collapsed said, "Though you rest afar, you are in our hearts." And the other, Parnell, 1748. We didn't stay in there very long that day, not even long enough to go upstairs or down cellar. The excuse we made up to one another was that the steps, they looked too weak to hold us. And anyway, there wasn't enough light to see by. But those weren't the real reasons. You see, all the time we were in that house, I couldn't get over feeling that somebody or something was watching us. A couple of times I just knew eyes were staring at my back, and though I turned around real fast, I never saw anything. Later, Harry and Books told me they felt the same thing. It was our second time inside when we saw the stain on the floor, a narrow line of dampness that made a perfect circle, or about 3 feet across, right at the bottom of the stairs. Books leaned down, rubbed at the stain, and sniffed her fingers. "Seems to be water," she said. "Probably the roof leak," Harry's guess. Books shook her head. "Leaks make spots, not circles. And there hasn't been any rain in 2 weeks." "Maybe somebody came in here and made the circle just for a joke," Harry replied. But he didn't believe that for a minute, any more than Books or I did. We all knew about the rumors that even though the house had been abandoned for years, Parnells still inhabited it. Oh, not living people, ghosts. If you want to know more about the ghosts, check this book out here at Lincoln School. Who Knew There'd Be Ghosts by Bill Britton. And let's see if you can make it all the way to the end of the book. So far it's interesting, and we painted such a great picture of the location of the Parnell house. But why don't you take a chance and read all the way to the end and see how the book ends up.